G'day, citizens. Welcome to the Inforunners. I'm Execute, joined today by Old Man Hurst himself, Algared. How you doing, bud?
Well, I'm probably feeling like you are. Exhausted. This is the curse of a Redeemer.
Yeah. This is probably one of the most cursed episodes we've ever done. It is like the third time we've recorded this. We recorded it back in July 2023. But a benefit of that is that it also has aged better now because they've made, just in the last week or so, they've announced changes to this thing that has fixed some of the issues, but we still have some issues with it. So it's kind of cool in hindsight for us to go between those. But also, we recorded it on the weekend, and then there was issues with that episode. So now we recorded it with Paul again, both the two times, and we'll chuck those up on Patreon for you guys to see, for your patrons. But yeah, so we're just going to do it again because we need an episode. Because Algared, you leave in what, 24 hours for Manchester?
48, about 36 hours.
Yeah, and I'm...
No, I don't leave for Manchester. I go to Indonesia first and then off, but yes.
But we're heading to CitizenCon type thing.
Yep, that's right.
And so this episode will be one of the ones you guys are watching while we're away. We'll still be doing live streams, but this just means we don't have to organise to get together, and we can just preset them and forget and have a party without you. Bye!
But even though this is our third episode recording...
Yep.
How many takes have we tried so far tonight?
Tonight's about 5 or 6. Don't let anyone know that, Algared.
Like I said, this is the curse of the Redeemer.
Yeah, it is like we started at 7:30. It's now 9:30. Just taking way too long, right?
It's fast becoming Execute's most hated shit.
Oh yes. yeah. I'm starting to feel. Sorry, Paul feels this way. Anyway, all right. So we'll start off with the Redeemer. I think Actually, we'll go over the stuff from its initial pitch, Algared. I think that's probably where we should start. So, I don't know if we should read all this out, but I think what we'll do then, Algared, is, for me, the thing that this all kind of starts with, the problems all start with the very first thing on this list, and I think it's just a sign of the times. Way back in 2014, where when you and I kind of first saw this thing at PAX, it essentially comes down to the people that were designing it were not CIG people, right? And they were going in with passion and everything they had, and they came out with some really good ships during the Next Great Storm. I mean, but just the manufacturers were not even polished out for CIG that much at that stage, let alone kind of normal people outside the company. And I think that's kind of all snowballs out from there.
Yeah, but even back then, we did have RSI ships, we did have Anvil ships, we did have Aegis ships, we did have Origin ships, we did have Drake ships. So we did have some. Yeah. So we did have some design language for the manufacturers, but as you said, it wasn't fleshed out. And so that did give rise to weird engines or weird other stuff. So it explains some of the weirdness we saw in those designs.
Yeah.
For me, part of the problem comes down to the crew size. Because when you've got a pilot and two gunners, everyone went, oh, that's Freelancer, Connie, Cutlass size. That means it must have X, Y, and Z. And I think when you look at what the role of the ship seems to be, which was Marines and dropship, that kind of changes the focus of what it was.
It made almost all the designs balloon. And you can see that in like the Brutus as an example, a bigger Cutlass and stuff like that. What I meant though by things like the manufacturers not being filled out, like a really good example of that is the Boomslang. It's an Origin gunship, and that's not really in their purview. They're more the luxury touring, highly refined taste, and that combat's kind of like below their belt. And what I mean by that is most of their combat is defensive, not offensive. Yes, we have outliers like the 315p, not 315p, sorry, 325A and 125A and things like that. But they are more, again, in that smaller low-end niche. Like, for example, we don't have a 425A or a 625A, things like that.
Yeah. Well, so when you think of how this ship was always viewed by people, everyone always viewed it as a gunship. But if it was a gunship, you'd have expected the turret information to be above the Marines. This was, I think, initially envisaged as a dropship. with the turrets being for crew to be able to support that role.
Maybe for the Redeemer, but the actual competition, they had a vote for the competition, and the one that won was Gunship. So it was meant to be a gunship. I can't speak to what the Four Horsemen were actually trying to design with the Redeemer. All I can say is
I'm just looking at the specs in terms of the order of what if you're designing a gunship, you'd have expected the guns to be up front and center, whereas they're at the bottom. It's 2-man turrets for your gunners and a remote turret.
Yeah.
That doesn't say gunship. But when you've got the Marines, 4 to 6 Marines or cargo as the third item that it's got to fulfill, that's selling the point in my mind that this is more focused, or was initially intended to be more focused on a dropship. So you've already got this design language problem going with the ship as well, and I think that was also part of the problem we had with the ship.
So I think probably the most famous or kind of well-known is these engines right here. I know you and Paul have massive problems with these engines from a lore perspective, and kind of my last fix in the very first video was if they bring out another ship by Aegis, because this in lore is meant to be the latest Aegis ship. So if they basically brought out a ship that was like a generation behind, and the example I gave at the time was we don't have an Aegis starter ship. We do have an advanced starter in the Avenger, but we don't have a starter. So, for example, say they made a new starter and they put something akin to this. Now, it doesn't have to be exactly like these. In fact, I probably think it'd be better if it wasn't. But something that was a hybrid between this and a more standard engine, right? Something that shows a growth or at least a step between. And again, they could go back and refine that later and add one either side of that and show that it's like a 5-step process if they really wanted to, but it only needs one step in that direction. There is just so much of a gap between these engines, and I'd almost look at not just Aegis but across the entire game. There is nothing like this.
There's nothing like that. I even because we know that from a Tavaran war that the UEE pilfered a lot of tech from a Tavaran. And before the Tavaran wars, we didn't really have shield tech. We were using, UEE was using armor, yet this had shield emitters. And so the thought for me was, this is, if these engines were pilfered Tavaran tech because we didn't have Tavaran ships at that time, that would have answered that would have kind of, from a lore perspective, solved the problem. They've taken elements from...
Even if it's not Tavaran, just saying it's got some kind of new tech in it, either human or alien or something that's been found. Or even like at the time, this had special shield emitters. That's kind of what they called them, shield nipples or whatever they called them afterwards. But we're now getting emitters across all ships. So are they still going to be special anymore, or are they helping it recharge faster? That's all things that we kind of have to wait and see now with the new components being rejigged on this thing. But for the actual engines, I never had a problem with personally, but across the entire community, it made or break the ship. Made or broke it for most people.
Certainly people either loved them or hated them. I like the look of the engines. I like the way they seem to work. I like the look of them. But my problem was they were just so unique and so by themselves that they did not fit the verse.
And there was talk as well too, wasn't there, of making it so that it could, it's like this, it can articulate and face down, so you could kind of hover. That'd be kind of cool, but it was never ever shown in these concepts. It was just a thought people had. I think it would personally be kind of cool to even possibly rejig the engines, because like they can only really, as you see up in this concept above me, the two silhouettes up there, they only really close and open to a point. Maybe if you made them so they could actually go out completely flat so it can hover better, maybe just rejig them slightly, and even kind of keep some of the styling and maybe move them more back towards normal engines if that's something they want to do. But that is a lot of work for not a lot of gain. So
and
it's a secondary for me.
And given that now we've also got we've got the VTOL mode as well as the landing mode. So if you had the engine that did spin so over like that for VTOL mode, that again gives more credence to these engines and makes them have benefits or fit.
I think the benefit thing is a key point, Algared. They don't really have any benefit right now. Now, maybe down the line we'll get something that do that, but at the moment, with the way they kind of move, all they seem to do is look different. And what does it do? Make them travel faster or something? Like, it just, there's no real reason to have this whole funky nutcracker system.
Yeah. Now, because this is a ship that I think was so much supposed to be like a prowler. You look at the prowler's wings. You know, the feathery type arcs on the prowler's wings. When they're deployed, when it's landed, they actually end up giving cover for the troops as they're getting out. So they actually do have a purpose.
Yeah.
But these don't seem to do anything. But as you said, look cool.
Yeah.
So these are a problem that exists both in the verse and for the ship.
Yeah. So all right. Well, as you said when we were talking before the show, that's the outside. So let's kind of go in the side. So this is an older video from way back in 2014 of what it used to be, and we're just going to look at the one room here. So we've got a couple of different shots of the kind of back room, and you can kind of see how much it's changed. But the beds were a big thing that I'd forgotten about before we went back to look at these, and they're way smaller now. But even if you kind of can contrast this now to what it was, this looks so much wider than the one we have right now.
Yeah, and one of the problems I always had with this ship when it came out was the beds were just too small. It was like when you got in the beds, it was almost like your concertina, shrunk down. And
they're like coffins, aren't they? There's like a little screen.
and when you look at the bottom, bunk, it's like literally inches off the floor.
Yeah.
When you get up to it. And so they're really hard to get into. Now you can see there are 3 beds. There's 3 crew. You had a dining table. It was very Connie-esque in that interior space or usage of the space. The interesting one was at the turret position.
Yep.
So when the turret is lifted up, you're actually able to get into the cargo hold. Which was 2 SCU cargo space.
Yeah, really tiny. And it's got like it was meant to have a crane system that went back along the tail and would deliver the cargo down behind. And obviously that's been rejigged now, and you kind of just dump the cargo as you come up in via the ramp. This door here was, this just shows you how far things become. A separate toilet and shower. There is no ship that has that. They are all shared like that now. Back
in the day, the Connie used to have that arrangement. You had the sink in the middle and the shower on one side and the loo on the other. So this was very much like takes a lot of inspiration, I think, from RSI, and yet it was also an Aegis ship. So it was, you could see where the design language problems again were rearing their head.
Yeah.
But my problem with this was the ship was just trying to do too much. I actually think the ship was really essentially supposed to be a dropship, not a gunship. And even as a gunship, it didn't need all that stuff.
Yeah, and I think a lot of what you said before about people just assume what the size had to be, and they made it bigger and it ballooned. And I think that's not what they were really going for, because again, it was like a small test thing that they wanted people to do, because really the Next Great Star Machine was trying to find artists and stuff like that.
Yeah. And one thing you've got to say about the Redeemer, for all its faults and for all its problems, it really did show the team could manipulate and use the engine that they were using, and they could show how they could put things together and do a whole package. And that, I think, was really the key thing that they were looking for. But it just, for me, it just missed the mark of being that dropship. And to make it a gunship, they actually outgunned it to what it was supposed to be.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of where we can start to move into the fixes now, but also some of the, actually there's one more issue I want to go over, and that's the modularity stuff, right? So this was originally a gunship that had dropship elements, as you saw from when we go back to the original Next Great Starship video, right? And now it is a long-range kind of escort type of fighter type of thing with a modular bay at the bottom, where you kind of really don't go down there now because the bottom module, you don't need to be near the beds, you don't need to be near the shower, but they are just the added things it gives you. But if you then swap that bottom area out to be more drop seats, like the original intent, you've then got more people on there. So you can clearly see as soon as you add more people onto this ship, it's going to have extra components and stuff like that for the living. What do you call it? Life support. That's what I was thinking of. Thank you, Algared. And so that will change it again. But I think we can kind of move from there into what your and Paul's major issues with this ship the first time around. And I still think it's kind of valid because the actual fix that we kind of had at the time was it really the Redeemer had moved to such a point where it was so different from where it started. It was this overgunned, kind of sluggish, tanky type of ship, where its original concept is this highly mobile gunship and dropship. Right? They're almost juxtaposed for what they wanted to do, and with the moves and changes of the components now, they are clearly have now drawn the line in the sand and said, no, we're going back to this quick mobile tank but less gunned. So it's got extra shields, extra armor type of thing, and it's highly mobile and hard to hit. So you could still go up against a hammerhead in this thing, but you've got to dodge all the bullets. Where before this thing kind of just sat back and shot at the hammerhead and kept its distance. And let's be honest, that's kind of cheesy and not as fun. I do kind of prefer this going back to the original concept. And I'd like to put that out to you, Algared. Now knowing what it turned into and dragging it, well, not dragging it, but turning it back to its original concept. What's your preference between those two, considering we've now had 18 months between the two re-records of this?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things we said that if it was a dropship, you really wanted the turret, the cockpit facing downwards to support the crew, to be able to see where you're going and dropping the crew.
But before you go into that, I want the answer on the old versus new.
Yeah, I think it really needs to be split into two. I can see them moving closer to that, but it doesn't answer the problem. I think even when you look at the original concept, 2 turrets and a remote turret and 2 missile racks is not a gunship. That's less turrets than a 2-man turret is the same as a Connie and a remote turret. That's not really that chunky a gunship if that's all it's doing. But the crew, the dropship ability to drop a squad to be able to do that boarding action of a ship, to do that kind of checking and manifests and that type of stuff, that's, I think, what this ship was aimed for. And if you're going gunship end, it needs more guns based on the original, but then it doesn't need the boarding action. So it really, I think, the problem is it's still doesn't answer the question. I think it needs to be 2 different ships.
And I think that, so now we can kind of move on to what you and Paul kind of highlighted a lot. So you said like a drop ship essentially needs to be lower to the ground, and this cockpit's kind of too high up. It needs to be lower. The modular thing that we kind of worked out was instead of having 2 decks, it was 2 modular rooms that were side by side, and you could pick which configuration you wanted. So essentially you could have like a core room, which they both use, but then again allowing them to be on different sides of ships. I guess you could do it top and bottom as well if you really wanted to, but it allowed you to kind of choose where you wanted the layout to be, because again, you kind of, if you look at the ship right now, it's already got drop seats in it, but they're upstairs, where if you could have had that downstairs and then the module was at the top, that would have given more benefits to that, because it would make more sense to have the kitchen upstairs, wouldn't it? And the beds. But
the drop seats we've got upstairs at the moment are really only for the gunners to be sitting in when they're not sitting in their gun. So it's not really, even in that sense, it's not being designed at present as a drop ship. It's just really a gunship.
Yeah.
And with the pilots, with the multiple pilot guns, with the heavy turret guns, with its missiles, it is a gunship in its current form.
Yeah.
But I think it misses out on when you compare it to the original design specs, it doesn't. It doesn't meet that. And I think the original design specs call for a creation of a new ship.
Yeah. And I think, having seen the Redeemer in the state that it was, where it was kind of upped-gunned and kind of more sluggish, I actually think if you took that and put it onto a different manufacturer, there's still room for that there, right? And we've now got the Corsair, we've now got the Connie, and we've got this that are all gunships. I kind of sit there and go, Anvil's an obvious choice for me. I did actually kind of, after we did the first episode, I kind of did a really rough sketch and kind of laid this out. And I'll bring it up real quick while you're talking, but it's a really rough sketch. You've seen it, so you know what.
But one of the things in the sketch that X kind of nutted out was trying to he made it a big bottom girl, but he also changed the engine. He kind of gave him more a redeemery look, not a redeemery, but a reclaimery look. So chunky, and I think in your design you kind of pushed that gunship motive a lot more.
Yeah,
because you had you had more turrets. Whereas I think if you go in the dropship version, you actually want less turrets.
I had one. I kind of made one of them like a remote turret, and then two. Oh, here, look, I'll show you when I get it open. I got a snippet though because I didn't plan for this, as damn usual. But yeah, so I've got it in Photoshop here. It is literally very stick figurey because I actually did it on a really big panel, and then I yeah, opened it all out that way. I'm just trying to remember how to open this. File, save. I'll just edit this bit out, Algared. It's not going to let me open it quickly. Yeah, so right, yeah, so this is kind of what I came up with. It's really rough, as you can see, but you can kind of see in it, it's got Carrick aesthetics, it's got Pisces aesthetics. I kind of really went into the Anvil type of thing. It's a bit bigger, probably more wider. But yeah, I ended up putting the turrets on the left and right of the ship. And in that middle section there, it had two decks that you could customize. So you could basically go up or below, and the whole ship is two decks. And you can kind of see the pilot seats there is a little bit character inspired. So you've kind of got a guy on the top deck and a guy on the bottom deck. Rather than having the three seats on the bottom, you've just got like one pilot and one crew member above him and stuff like that. Same number of people, just essentially rejigging what was already there. But yeah, I don't know. I know
But again, you can also see that you took away the scissors, the nutcrackers, because again they don't really fit with the aesthetic of the game. They're a great idea. Don't get me wrong. I love the look. I love the aesthetic, but yeah, it's not Star Citizen.
But it has some differences as well. Like I essentially took the back legs of the Carrack and made them wider, so it's kind of got this aggressive kind of bat stance, which is kind of, you know, why. Well, I called this the Reaper. I called it the Anvil Reaper, right? So it's just my idea. I don't expect them to copy this in any way, shape, or form. I fully expect them to make a completely different ships. But all I'm trying to show here is that there are other ships that could do what the Redeemer was doing. That's all I'm trying to show there. So yeah. Right. I think that's kind of it, Algared. So I think the kind of the fix is that I want another gunship, and I think you and Paul were essentially saying the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. We either need the gunship version, because you look at those specs and you tell me, do two man turrets and a remote turret, is that a gunship to you?
Yeah.
You know, and you can see it clearly didn't meet that, because when they put the ship into game, they actually upgunned it. Before it was even put in the game, it was upgunned to make it a gunship.
I do still think that the ship that I think that may contend with this closest to what you and I have kind of probably looked at may actually end up being the Marquee Mark when that eventually drops, you know, with the two turrets, the bounty hunting stuff. Because that's the other thing. One of the modules for this was just a cargo thing along the bottom, and again, once you have the cargo, you can put bounty hunting modules in there. That is one of the things that this ship is going to be really good at when it's done.
The one of the things as we were talking about the way the cargo used to be in the tail, and it was basically a two SCU cargo space. That's basically the space for one person to be lying down in a cryo bed.
Yeah.
And so it almost did have that bounty huntery feel to it.
I've heard some crazy ideas for modules this thing over the years. Like I've heard ones like where the whole floor is kind of cut out on the bottom part, and you could literally have like a tractor beam that pulls up a cyclone into it. And so basically you come down from the drop seats at the top, and you basically get into the cyclone, and it just lowers the cyclone to the ground, and it's like an SAS cyclone delivery.
Well,
It
you'll
would be
remember
awesome.
the original lower section of this had the 6 seats plus the ammo locker. But right in the middle, you had the
docking collar.
The hatch, the docking collar. So they'd dock back, plus you had your ramp out the back. So it was kind of this weird.
There's almost no way to put a docking collar on this now because the tail would be in the way. The only place you could really put it is at the back behind there, but you'd need the tail to like break in half or something for it to dock. It just so that was cut. So there's just so many things that were kind of promised that didn't make the cut because of the way the ship is, and I think they're so I don't want to say the word fixated, but they really didn't want to change the look of this ship, and they were kind of stuck with how it looked. And I think they've just had to make a lot of compromises. And I think in some kind of phrase, they've either got to build another gunship, and I think they'll find a lot of people will jump ship because of that, or they've got to just cut and twist and fix some of the major problems with it. But the conclusion's exactly the same as it was last time. We need another ship. We need another gunship that kind of braces the difference between these two.
Yeah, I think revert this one back to the original design.
Which is what they're doing.
And the dropship, turn it into the actual dropship that it seemed to have been envisaged, and then create the actual heavy gunship.
Yeah,
which I think everyone wanted, and I think this is that kind of the Caterpillar, not the Caterpillar, the old Drake, and Buccaneer type problem.
Oh
The Cutlass was the freighter that could be agile and fight, and they said, well, no, it's a freighter, it's got to be slow.
Well, and that is definitely the case right now, because they've turned it into, like in live right now, it's this sluggish, complete. Even I had that reaction. They've taken the size 5 guns away, blah blah blah. But as time's gone on, like a couple of weeks later now, I can see that it is going back to what it was, and I'm losing these big guns, but I'm getting all my maneuverability back, and that's what I hated about it. I preferred the maneuverability. This is literally going to become a fighter's nitmare. Like literally going to become a fighter.
I remember when they took the maneuverability of this away, and you were beside yourself. And then I know when they made the changes, and they've castrated it, and and my initial response was no, not really, but
well, it's not punching up as much anymore. It's just kind of like punching to the side and up and down now. And by the same token, those SOS 5 turrets that were so slow to rotate, they won't have that problem anymore. They'll do it a lot faster now. But, there's other little issues that are going to creep in where now the pilot has the same size guns as the turret gunners. And we've seen that psychologically in play between the Scorpius and the Hurricane, where the Hurricane just feels so much better because it makes you work as a team, where the Scorpius pilot just goes, I don't give a shit about this guy, I'm going to shoot whatever I want. So you just don't have the teamwork there. So, I'd almost kind of wish they'd downsize the guns on the pilot and left the size 5s there, or maybe they take the size 4s off the pilot completely and put maybe, it'd be weird to have 3 guns on each turret, but you get what I'm trying to say, right? Like and distributed them to the turrets instead, because that teamwork is just one of the best parts of some of these gunships. So
no, I kind of agree.
Is there anything you'd like to hear from people below in the comments, Algared, in regards to the Redeemer?
What do you think about the Redeemer? What would you like to see change? Do you think the original specs were ever fulfilled in any of the ships that were in Next Great Starship? And if they weren't, what do you think was the fix for them? And certainly, what do you think was the fix for the Redeemer, which we have?
A second ship. I think the thing for me is, it's like, are you happy with it going back to the old stuff? Are you happy to give CIG enough rope, so to speak, to let them make these changes and see how they turn out? Like, are you wanting them to make those shield things work properly? Do you have the engine issues we talked about? But I think you'll find, like, if you go out and ask a lot of people, you either like the engines or you don't. It's very polarizing. There's no, like, it's love them or hate them. So yeah, that's what I'd kind of like to know. Just your general thoughts on this ship. You know, are you bailing on it now they're making the changes, or are you going to let them figure it out?
Yeah. Are you happy that it's become more agile and tanky, even though it's lost some of its gunpowder?
Yeah. All right. With that, then don't forget to like, subscribe, ring that notification bell, set it to all, and thank you for everyone that joined us on Patreon at the end of the video. You definitely helped get us to CitizenCon this year. We could not have done it without you guys. I cannot stress how important you were this year. We would not be there. 100%.
Yeah. It certainly does help, just even in the sense of keeping us sane, keeping us balanced.
Very much so. All right, with that then, he's been Algared.
He's been Execute, and we're out of here. Take care.
See you, citizens.